Welcome to MQC, the Massachusetts Quadball Chat for off-pitch chats with Carsen and Sierra. Normally we'd have a recap of last weekend, but there was no last weekend. So we're going to start by looking ahead at our D2 Championship Bowl series.
Yes, so this coming weekend at Fletcher Field, which is at the Tufts campus from 9 a.m. to about 3, depending on what we'll get into in a minute. It is going to be the D2 Championship um, games. So it's all going to be kind of culminating in a bit of a bracket best of 3 series for a bunch of the teams to see who is going to get promoted to the Division 1 spot. The relegation game to see who goes down to D2 will happen later this season. But the 4 teams competing are going to be Emerson, Tufts, Middlebury, and UVM. That was not in the order in which they are ranked, but we'll get into that as we actually go over the games. So kicking us off is going to be the number 1 D2 ranked team in Emerson versus the number 4 in Tufts.
Yeah, I think that this game is it's kind of already happened this season. These teams play each other so frequently. I don't think that we're going to see any upsets this weekend in any of these games. But I think Tufts has struggled a lot with their roster depth this season. They haven't had a deep bench. Um, and I think in order to succeed this weekend in any way, they need to probably play more conservative defense and then elongate their offenses and try to seize as many opportunities as they can.
Yeah, I know, some little insider information from one of the alumni. Emerson is going to be without Janie Hillman this coming weekend. And in the beating game, I think that is a big loss for them. I think she provides a lot of just stability and just like such a commanding presence, I think, for Emerson. She knows what she wants the team to do and is like very good at executing on that. I think she's one of the more aggressive beaters as well, who can still get back, has a lot of the fundamental skills. And so I think it's really going to be for Emerson, maybe not like necessarily in this series, but across the weekend, like who's going to step up with her not able to be there this weekend.
Yeah, I think one who has like made significant strides in the past 2 seasons is Adrian Manansala. His skills are like super sound now, even if he is surprised when he gets them off. Um, and I'm excited to see how he does this weekend. I mean, Peyton Schwiebert is always, I think, a stabilizing presence for Emerson, especially in the backfield. So we'll see how they go.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would like to see, and I think will be more important as we get into what might come later for Emerson or Tufts, whoever wins the series, is how they get their chasers more involved. Again, I think it'll be more important later, but I'd really like to see. I think we've said this one week, and then she wasn't there that weekend, so want to bring it back up. But Ryan Leary for Emerson, I'd like to see her get like more reps with the ball in her hand. I think they look the best when she is involved in some way. And so whether it's like getting her more involved in like a cutting aspect or like starting with the ball and getting into more of like a distributor role, I'd really just like to see them like have more cohesion. I think in like a fast break, especially against D2 teams, since they've kind of been tested with a lot of the D1 teams this spring, I think they are good at the fast break. Like they know kind of what they want to do, but I think now figuring out how that they can get like an actual half court setup, especially with all 4 of their players, is
Mm-hmm.
going to be big for them to like actually, you know, not just win D2 championships and then get promoted, but also then when they get to D1, actually like take those steps.
Yeah, I think that like you said, they know when to run. I don't think that they run necessarily with purpose all of the time. Their fast breaks usually look pretty incohesive, and kind of tend to fall into instead of going and taking the fast break and running together and scoring, they take the fast break and then they run around the hoops and wait for the defense to arrive and the rest of their team. So I'd like to see them take the opportunities that they're given with like a head full of steam and convert on them.
Scoring's not fun if somebody's not in your way. Um, with that being said, though, I do still think Emerson is probably going to take the series in 2 um, before they, move on to the finals later in the day.
And so our next set of games is between number 2 and 3, so Middlebury and UVM. So a Battle of Vermont Part 2, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. Fans of the series might remember this was dubbed the Battle of Vermont when they met each other last. not last weekend, a couple weekends ago. I don't remember the exact number, but they've played this spring. So I think both teams are going to know what to expect. From Middlebury, you're going to get, probably the same 9 players that you've gotten all semester. UVM, I think, will have a much deeper roster, but I think Middlebury, I'm a big advocate of like if you have smaller numbers, it's still great to play because then you like figure things out a lot more. Um, and I think the 9 that they have been looking like better and better each time they've played. It's a lot more like it's not just like Jason Wu and Kate Petty. Now they're getting a lot more other people involved. Their beaters are looking a little sharper, like a little bit more like aggressive on what they want to do, looking more confident. Um, and so yeah, I think while UVM might have more depth, I think Middlebury is going to have more of like the top end talent that is going to be hard for UVM to kind of come up against.
Yeah, I think with like UVM's depth, they can be slightly more dynamic than Middlebury can be, whereas Middlebury kind of relies on running plays through a select 3 or 4 chasers. I think UVM has a lot more looks, and they have a lot more players who look to attack the hoops more consistently, whereas I think Middlebury relies on their beaters more to cause chaos and then react off of that rather than creating necessarily their own opportunities.
Yeah, I think on the flip of how you said, like, for Tufts to try and get a win, it's going to be they want to play slow, keep the score close. I think UVM will want to do the opposite. I think anytime you're playing a team with not a lot of subs, especially considering like if Middlebury thinks that they're going to win these games, they're going to want like to be as well rested as possible. So I think for UVM, like pushing the pace, like making Middlebury uncomfortable, just like maybe at the start just trying to run in transition, even if it's not necessarily like always the right play, just to like kind of tire them out. That way, like maybe come a game 2, or if you can force a game 3, then I think you just like give yourself a better chance at making it further. So I'd like to see them just kind of push pace of play. Even with that, I still think it's probably going to go the way of Middlebury.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've shown even with small roster, they're still very capable.
Yeah.
So I think it'll probably go again in 2 games. But I do think if there's going to be one of the initial series that go to a game 3, I think it will likely be this one, just
Mm-hmm.
from a numbers perspective.
And I think it would be game 2.
Yeah, I agree. I think it might be a little bit of tired, fatigued legs on
Mm-hmm.
Middlebury, but they've looked pretty good with lots of games so far this semester. So
Yeah.
I have faith in them. I'm holding strong. Um, So obviously we don't know who's actually going to win these games until Saturday and they're played. But with that in mind, thinking it's probably going to be Emerson taking it on their side and Middlebury taking it on that side, that's kind of who we have for our prediction in the D2 finals to actually get the promotion up to D1. Um, with that, I think it's going to be pretty equally matched. I don't know if you have any like specific thoughts about the players, the teams.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like who's better conditioned. Did Middlebury have to play 3 games? Does Tufts bring an upset and force Emerson into 3 games? And who can be more cohesive as a team? Like I think, like we've said, Middlebury has like a couple of like significant star players that do a lot for their teams, and I think Emerson is in a similar situation. Well, while their scoring I think is more spread out, I think that their facilitators are like once they sub off, they stagnate significantly. Um, so I think it'll be like who has drilled better, who is more up to speed with each other on what they want to do.
Yeah, I think that is one thing that will favor Middlebury is just like, again, having so few people at these tournaments. I think it like you start to learn real quick what your team wants because it's just the 4 of you playing nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that will favor Middlebury. I expect Emerson to get honestly like probably a pretty quick lead in a lot of the games against, or I guess it's 2 maybe 3, but get a quick lead against Middlebury, and then I think it will be the middle stretch of the game that really kind of decides how the game's going to go. I think Emerson will come out hot. They're not I guess a young team, young to me, but um, I think they have a lot of energy, like kind of across the board. I think when they get one goal, I think we saw this like the RPI games and the BU games, like they get one goal, they get excited, they keep going. But I think, yeah, as the subs start to get in, I think some of the energy does get lost a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's about how can they counteract that to keep up with Middlebury because Middlebury has shown like, they might be gassed begging for water on the field, but they're going to keep running. Like they're an
Yeah.
athletic team. I think to your point, they are very well conditioned from what we've seen. And so I think it's really like, can Emerson match that conditioning and then hopefully add a little bit more like of a skill advantage to push them over the top?
Yeah, and I think one thing that Middlebury does really well is like play scrappy, especially on like second chance opportunities. And I think that Emerson can really struggle with finishing offenses and finishing defenses and falling on loose balls and retrieving rebounds and not just like kind of just making a bad decision on offense when they don't need to. I think they can get very sped up. Um, so I'm looking to see like Emerson put in more like scrap on the defensive end and on the offensive end in order to match Middlebury because those second chance opportunities will start to catch up with them.
Yeah, I agree. And, not even just talking, I guess, about what's going to happen or what could happen this weekend. I think like thinking further ahead, right? So you can speak definitely more to Emerson, but Middlebury, I think if they were to get promoted going into next year, I think they are losing one beater in Greg. And then they will have the return of Sydney Alexander, Josh Harkins, and Hayden Laster.
Huge.
Yeah. So like they're missing what could have arguably been like their top three players for the whole semester, and I think a couple other people as well. I don't know if they're graduating or not. So they're like missing a good chunk of their team. Like when you consider they're bringing like I
Like
think
that's probably their starting line.
yeah, exactly, like their starting line, people who do a lot on defense, on offense, and so I think it's for me. I know it's all about this season. They're not here right now, but like what can either Emerson or Middlebury do come next season if they were the ones to get promoted. And I feel like I'd really like to see those players play in D1 because I
Mm-hmm.
think having like a whole semester of just like the Jason Wu, Kate Petty show and some of their younger beaters starting to like get up to speed, I'd be really interested to see what happens when you can add a lot more like experience and like not wisdom, but like some older players back into the mix and just like how that would translate against the D1 teams and what they look like next year.
Yeah, Emerson's only graduating player, as far as I know, is Aiden Hickey, who is, I think, one of like their star. I
Widely
think
important.
I maybe not the backbone of their team, but I think that they're like highest IQ player probably. And then several others are going to the LA program in the fall or spring semester, so their roster is going to look pretty jumbled as far as returners go, especially on the older end. Um, and I think that another year at the top of D2 would benefit them. I think if they spring up into D1 and then all of a sudden half of their, returning players are gone, that can be a really rude awakening for those new recruits who you're trying to maintain and build a program with. So I think another year in D2 would actually benefit them. I don't know if that's going to be the case this weekend.
Yeah, I think that is one thing. I think last year was the first year since the promotion relegation system has been implemented in MQC, where the team that got promoted the year before didn't immediately get relegated the year after. And I think a lot of that is what you see from like teams where like maybe the senior class is like so important to them that come the next year when you're trying to fill that little gap that happened because people graduate every 4 years, or however long. But yeah, when that gap happens, like the team looks a lot worse. They lose some of the cohesion. They lose somebody who's like able to kind of take over games in the same way like that Aiden can for Emerson. And so I think Middlebury, if they were to get promoted, likely looks better
Yeah,
come the next season. Um, and I like parody, so I feel like I'm partial to seeing that because I think
I agree.
Middlebury as a team is a team that could be really challenging some of these D1 teams and actually shaking things up a lot next year. Um, Not that I don't think Emerson can. They played close with BU, they played close with RPI. I think there's definitely a lot of parity even with like Middlebury, Emerson, and then the
Yeah, that lower tier of D1 and I think upper
yeah
tier of D2 is very close
close.
right now.
Yeah, I agree. But I feel like I'd like to see Middlebury there. I feel like they're a team that I think like 2 years ago they looked really really good. And it's the same thing with some graduations. They just kind of I think got relegated in a tough spot. So I'd really like to see them. I feel like take that step into D1 and then actually get to keep it for a little bit because I know like some of them I think are only like juniors right now or maybe sophomores. So I think they have like a couple more years of like this really strong core that they've got. developing right now.
So I think overall we're Emerson and 2 over Tufts, Middlebury and 2, maybe 3 over UVM. And then the Emerson and Middlebury final that we think is likely to happen, I think it would be. I think it could go to 3 games. I think that Emerson and Middlebury have had long games in the past where it's like they get a catch, but then it's like those last 3 goals just don't come to them very quickly. So I think this is going to be a very back and forth series. I think cards are going to play a role in the series and momentum.
I feel like in my heart, Middlebury wins it just because I'd be excited for next year. I think having so few people and like to the point of like missing a lot of their like kind of like star players right now, um, I feel like I'm gonna still give it to Middlebury, but probably like in a 2-1. Um, and I feel like maybe they lose game one and then really lock in. But also to the point of not having a lot of people, I think the longer the day goes, the worse it gets for them.
That's a long ride.
Yeah.
Home, that's a long ride here, and that's a long day of playing for them.
Yeah. I believe in them as a fan. I'm rooting for Middlebury. I'm sorry to all the people I know on Emerson. Um, I don't mean it in a bad way. I feel like I want to see Middlebury on the up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how you feel the series is gonna go.
I honestly don't know. I think it's going to be 3 games. I think I would be surprised if it's 2, and I don't have a prediction. Like I genuinely don't know.
I genuinely think
because
it comes
like I
down.
don't know what Emerson looks like really without Janie,
Mm-hmm.
and she's so huge. Like I don't think their chasers have any idea how much she does.
Yeah, as somebody who beat in college, I always felt very disrespected by chasers not appreciating what I would do for them, whether I actually did anything for them or not. It felt like a lot. But yeah, I genuinely think to your point, like I could see this going 2-0 for Emerson, 2-0 for Middlebury, 2-1 either way. I think it really does come down to like where the cards are going, how gassed each of these teams are. Emerson does get like a 2-3 hour break, so that will benefit them. But are they gonna go eat a bunch of bad food and then get like stomach cramps and stuff before games?
Are they gonna drink water?
Are they gonna drink water? Drinking water is really important. So yeah, it's a toss up. I think Middlebury will come out with the wins. I don't think they're gonna come out easily. Um, but yeah, that's in my heart. That's what happens. So I guess we'll see, and we'll be back next week to talk about it. For this week, you can catch the games on the MQC Facebook page starting, I think, either at 9 or 10 a.m. I don't remember which one's set up and which one is when it actually starts, but check the MQC Facebook page. There'll be more information there, and you can catch all the games. If it's not streaming there, it will be on the YouTube channel. I know we've had some problems with Facebook, but it should be all good. So yeah, definitely stay posted or stay tuned for the post with all the information about the streams for this weekend.
We'll see you next week.